Checking.
Good morning, everyone. 5th, unbelievable, Thursday, December 5th. It's 9 a.m., and this is a regularly scheduled work session of the Town of Fort Myers Beach Town Council. If you would, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let the record show that all members of the council are present. And the first item on the agenda is an update on the Estero Boulevard project. I know that Rob Phelan is or was here, so is Kay. And does anybody have any questions? Joanne?
Just in previous meetings, way back, we had always talked about somebody coming from the county landscaping group to address town council, and we'd love to have that as maybe at our next one if we can. Just some landscape guidelines or
Roger,
whatever.
do you want to give an update on that?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, as you recall at our meeting that we had with Commissioner Sandelli and the county manager, the county is putting together an agreement whereby they would be transferring the landscaping budget, which they state is about $800,000 to the town for the town council's consideration. So that's where that currently stands. The issue that they're currently contemplating is not only how they would give us money to do the landscaping, but also allow us to do the landscaping using plantings that the council would like to see there, not necessarily meeting, which may not fully meet all the county standards. So they're meeting with the county attorney to try to work out that language, and that's going to be encompassed into a draft agreement that will come to the council for your consideration.
Would that require the town's maintenance then?
Yes. And any upgrades we do over the county's basic level of service would require the town's financial participation for the upgrade as well as the maintenance.
My only other comment is that from what I see, and they're down close to me, so I'm driving past it all the time, they're working very fast.
Sure.
And it's really encouraging. I'm thrilled to see it finished, at least to Publix for this year. It's going to make a big difference for the community. It's starting to feel a little bit, now the south end's going to have it on their shoulders, but at the same point, this very highly trafficked area in season is for the most part done, and it's really feeling good. So thank you for that. We love this sped up effort. Thank you.
Roxanne, any questions?
I had the same initial question that Joanne did about the landscaping. I also agree with Joanne that it looks like things are moving along well. The question that I get from the community as well as from myself is regarding the area which I call the presidential streets. It's supposed to be done, yet every time it seems that I drive by, they're in there tearing up the tiles. And I understand you have to redo things sometimes once, twice, 3 times, but it seems like it's been redone a dozen times or more. So I was just curious, as people are asking me, what's going on in there? What's the problem?
It's right at the top of Jefferson Street, and you know who happens to
Well,
live there.
they tear it up at Connecticut
Yeah,
too, and
it's been constant. Is it a fixable or soon-to-be remedied issue?
Rob Phelan, Lee County DOT for the record. So what they're doing now is we're going through the final punch list for the project, and we're identifying areas of the pavers that are cracked or have chips in them. So they're not pulling all the pavers up, they're going in and doing isolated pavers at locations. And the reason you think that they're redoing them a dozen times is because they're moving, they may have a dozen locations where they're doing it. So they're doing it, moving along from. What?
It's on the mic.
It's
so
okay.
Paper towels. Sorry.
I was just so excited about what you said, Rob. So terribly, terribly excited. I had to spill. Joanne. Okay, pardon the mess and the hysteria, the drama. Go ahead, keep talking.
You're
keep
all
talking.
about
So they're,
Up here,
they're
get
going
the
through and
water
just
out.
doing isolated locations. It may appear that they're doing it at multiple times at one spot, but it's, kind of progressing. Yeah, they're remobilizing every day, so.
And
And
do,
Darren, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Darren Brown, Christel Construction. The reason for that, so everybody knows, when we installed the brick pavers initially, and we moved traffic over to the center, we put a lot of loading on them, and that's an articulating system. So it's designed to flex and move under loading, but a lot of loading, what we had to do, and we accounted for that lesson learned in segment one, is once it's all done and we have traffic on their respective lanes, we go back in and we make sure all those pavers are set to match the curb lines and the structures. That's to get rid of any ups and downs or irregularities and make it look nice and smooth. So we went through and did that. And then we also found some of the pavers here and there that they are, like Rob mentioned, are repaving are individual or a couple here and there. We had the manufacturer come out and look, and it could have been a problem with, just some of those blocks or whatever. So the manufacturer is providing additional blocks to replace any that show a crack or a chip or whatever. So after they get them all reset to level, then we inventory the ones that we need to remove and replace because they're not, they got a crack or they don't look quite right. Then your manufacturer sent us more block, and now the guys are going out there and individually replacing the ones that aren't quite right. That way, end of the day, they're all nice and level, they all look good, there's not one with a crack in the middle or what have you. So that's kind of the process. And we needed to wait until traffic was off of that so the guys could get in there and get that all done.
do you have a date that you think that's going to finally be done, that we won't be seeing them in there anymore?
Yeah, they should be wrapping up. They work when they reset the pavers to level, they work from north to south, then turned around, they're working from south right back up to north. And we've gone through, if you drive by real slow, you're gonna see orange dots out there, identified all the ones that need something done to it, so they're working from south every day progressively back up north, picking and choosing those ones that need something done to it and moving on. So where they're at now, I expect them really only a couple more days, and you won't see them in the center anymore. And then the second activity that you saw in the center lane was the storm drain guys making sure that the grates that are on the inlets have the proper gap in there. And some of the grates, the manufacturer of the grate needed to replace a grate with a new grate to reduce that gap down so we didn't have a issue with bicyclists or what have you. So this is all stuff that's punch list, end of the job, the fit and finish that we're correcting and moving out of the way.
Thank you.
What all that is.
Anita, I'm sorry,
Sure,
there was
no, go
one
ahead.
other thing on my list. I've had two residents ask me to ask this.
Yes.
And that is, at Red Coconut, the fence was put up with the tarp, and the tarp's now falling down off, and that fence doesn't meet our code, and I'm wondering, I know that was for construction purposes.
Right.
When will that be coming down?
The fence is gonna remain in place for safety reasons until the county, the town, and Red Coconut come to an agreement on what they're gonna do for a permanent fence. We put it up, and we talked about this and gonna leave it up. With season coming, what we don't want is to remove the fence and then have somebody back their RV up too far and it overhangs the sidewalk, or a dog run out, or a kid kick a ball and go chase it. So we talked to the county, elected just to leave it there until the determination is made on what's gonna be there permanently that meets the code and gets approval and all that. Now, Red Coconut will be paying for that final wall. But as a safety measure, we left that in place until that's done and then it's constructed.
Can the tarp be repaired so it's not, I
The
mean, right
maintenance
now
of that,
it's,
we'll get the screening all tied back up, but the maintenance of that is gonna have to be shared with Red Coconut and everybody for the screening that goes on.
and is it under process now to?
It's not a town issue. Be perfectly honest, it's
I was just gonna ask that, what does the town have to do with this?
nothing. They apply for a permit to build whatever it is they're gonna build there. We're never there. I just think that it's a chicken and the egg issue, that because the construction fence is there, and I understand the county's reluctance to remove it, but then Red Coconut perhaps is not motivated to move forward and do something.
So can we set a time by which they need to apply because the fence is coming down?
I think, it would be good for the county to give them an indication that, hey, we've had this fence up there or out of that construction area been out of there for 90 days, and, we're going to give you 6 months to get something in place. If not, we're taking the fence down. But that's up to them.
Okay, thank you. But in the meantime, you can get it maintained at least so it.
Yeah, we
get
can
it strapped
get
back
it
up.
strapped back up, make sure it looks decent.
Thanks for those explanations, Darren.
Very good, thank you.
Ray, any questions?
I don't have any questions. I'd just comment too that I'm happy with the pace of the construction now. It's really picked up, and guys are out there jamming all day, every day, so it's good. Thank you.
Bruce, anything?
So, this was mentioned a while back, Rob, in some meeting, about the bike lane as you go north towards the Red Coconut. The bike lane just kind of disappears without any warning that,
But actually, south of the Red Coconut, there is a sign that says bike lane ends.
oh, is there?
Yeah.
I drove by there the other day and I
Yeah,
missed it.
this is the same issue we've talked about before, where you have a number of signs and people start becoming, they don't necessarily see all the signs that are there, but there is a sign just south of there that says bike lane ends.
Is it in the pavement or?
No, it's an actual post-mounted sign, black and white.
Is it on this, past
It's
the
on
other
the-
side of the sidewalk or is it in the?
I don't know whether it's between the sidewalk and the curb line or just behind the sidewalk off the top of my head.
I'll look for that. Have you got all your outfalls set for the last segment or phase?
We are finalizing, we have all of our locations set, and we're finalizing the agreements with the property owners for those remaining outfalls.
And do you have any brilliant solutions for Linnell?
That a challenge.
Yeah, but you're a brilliant guy, figure it out, come on.
I mean, we've batted through many ideas on there. We've gone round and about with the roundabout concept. The basic premise on there is that there isn't really sufficient right-of-way to accommodate the vehicles that we get through that corridor there. And the other option is signalization, but we've gone through and done our signal warrant analysis and doesn't meet the warrants for a signal, so we don't have justification through MUTCD to install the signal at that location.
Well, my other solution that I may have mentioned before is you make coming off of Linnell, right turn only. You put a roundabout at Fairview or at Albatross and Estero, so the guy can go down, turn right, flip back. No left turns off of Linnell. Likewise, I think you ought to have a roundabout at Bay Beach Lane.
Just kind of running through the right-of-way widths in my head there. So down at Albatross, that is in the section that's probably 100-foot right-of-way. There are some significant grade differences between the adjacent properties. I'm just kind of thinking,
Yeah.
brainstorming, so. But that section is already in the end of our segment 3 design and at the beginning of our segment 5-6 design. It's the end of the segment 4. It's at the beginning of the segment 5 section there. We're approaching 90% plan completion for that segment 5-6, and roundabout at that location at this point in time is a pretty substantial change to our design plan and would have a significant impact on the ultimate completion of the project.
No?
It's not a no.
I'm sorry, highly unlikely?
At Linnell is still a very problematic intersection. It's in the whole Santini Plaza thing there.
It's a fatality location.
I think Linnell could be, part of that could be cured if CVS were to minimize their hedge. Because I think it's part of the lack of visibility is that hedge around CVS. You don't see people coming, even when you're coming out of their parking lot or in, that hedge is a huge block to visibility.
Well, we've had them trim it down one time, a number of years ago. A safety committee had the town write a letter to them. They trimmed it down. I mean, they didn't have a problem doing that.
Keep in mind that you only have a sidewalk on one side of the roadway in that area there. When we're done with the project, there'll be sidewalks on both sides of the roadway. So, what you get is you get a concentration of all the pedestrians and cyclists that cross on that Linnell side of Estero Boulevard. By providing the sidewalk on both sides or multi-use path on both sides, on the beach side in addition, that gives another alternative for a lot of the pedestrians that are walking from some of the condos on the beach side, walking south or north, to have an alternate path, so they don't necessarily have to cross at that specific location.
But the problem isn't just pedestrians, it's the crapshoot hopping out of Linnell to turn left on Estero Boulevard, and then people turning left onto Linnell. The other idea that I threw out some years ago was to close off that Linnell exit of Centini Plaza and just have the other two entrants on Estero, so that you're cutting down some of that traffic flow into Linnell. Al Durrett wasn't so sure whether that was a good idea or not.
Sure not.
May I, Anita,
Sure,
just
go
on
ahead.
that topic? Is it possible, this is for you, but is it possible for the town to check the visibility triangle at that corner with CVS? Because I agree.
Yes.
When you pull out, you can't see, and then you have to pull on the sidewalk to actually look. And I've had somebody almost broadside me on a bicycle and yell at me, and I was going like inches forward because I couldn't see. So
Yeah, we'll have our Public Works people get with Rob and look at it together and see if it needs a haircut.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, sir.
One last thing before we wrap up this county thing. You all have been complimentary towards their increased effort, but I want you to be aware that typically you're probably used to the contractor slowing down and shutting down for the 2-week holiday period, and I don't believe that's their plan. So maybe Darren, you can help spread the word here through the media, et cetera, what your plans are going to be for the holidays.
That's correct. Right now, our only planned days off for the holidays are Thanksgiving Day, which is past, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, New Year's Day. Other than that, we're working. So,
Great.
Well, it's right in front of my house, and I say, go for it. So I will not be complaining.
we will, just so you guys know, we will be paving the southbound lane from Strandview to Madera Monday, Tuesday. We'll also be paving the center lane from roughly Madera all the way to a point between Dakota and Lazy. So that whole Publix area is going to open up to its regular configuration until we do final lift. We'll put a more permanent crosswalk in that section. Williams Drive will have the ability to make turns. We will shift traffic around, and we're going to close, the next area that will be closed will be the northbound lane from Bayland to south of Dakota. And we'll work that whole area in one large chunk.
Into South Dakota. Okay.
And then we're going to move back to the southbound lane. And then our center lane, as soon as Water Mains completes their work from Lazy Way to Gulf Drive, which they're nearing that completion there, we'll continue in the center with the big pipe. We're going to be knocking the big pipe out first as much as we can, and then build the roads on the sides, because that's the most time-consuming part of the job is the underground. So the grades work there that we can keep going the way we're going, not have to do the barrier wall like we did, and just get that center knocked out as quickly as we can, and then follow behind building the road on both sides.
We know when that water main work might be done that you're talking about?
They're doing clearances on the 4-inch main on the other side and some service connections, and then abandon the old main. I think they're waiting on just some health department items. It shouldn't be much longer there, and then you'll see my center lane
You mean 2
continuing.
weeks, a month, 3 months?
I would say less than a month, hopefully.
Christy Corey, for the record. Yeah, we're probably, depending on the holidays, We're currently waiting on some clearance from DEP for the water mains. We've got, I think, 4 connections on the 4-inch. So hopefully within a couple weeks, and then we have to abandon the main and grout what we can. So, hopefully by the end of December.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we just don't, it's hard for us to predict because they're going into holiday mode too.
Great,
I have one other question.
sure.
So, Rob, what's the plan on the stormwater past the Catholic Church? Is it going to be center or curb?
So from the Catholic Church to Flamingo, we're keeping the center trench drain system, the brick paver system. Starting from Flamingo south, we're going to a conventional road typical section, which means the road's sloped out towards the gutter line. And then we're using a conventional curb and gutter drainage system, and then we're taking the stormwater into a series of similar infiltration basins that we've used in the center roadway, but they're actually underneath the sidewalk sections.
Basically, the south end will match the north end in a way.
That's right.
To some
a-
extent, yeah, it's curb and
Just
gutter,
to-
yeah, it's,
From a layman's terms, people could visualize that.
yeah, as far as the drainage goes,
Yeah.
so.
We do sidewalk through that whole corridor?
The whole corridor will have new sidewalk on both sides of the roadway. We've got varying widths. Generally, once we get past Flamingo, I believe the sidewalk width is typically 8 feet. So we've got a much wider sidewalk section in that area.
Thank you.
So thank you all very much for everything you've been doing. We're at the tail end of the project, so I know you all will be very happy when it's over, and so will we. But thank you for your efforts. We appreciate it, and happy holidays to all of you. Tell your guys thank you,
One little
Darren.
tidbit so you guys know, from Flamingo South, where Rob was talking about, where it returns back to a standard roadway configuration. Once Water Mains has completed their work in that area, I'm bringing in a whole set of another crew, and they're gonna build that concurrent with everything behind me as well. So you're gonna see, as soon as Water Mains completes, a whole nother roadway crew come in to double time it down there. So keep that in mind.
And the completion goal date is,
We're targeting the end of July for segment 3 and 4. That's, what our schedule is targeting when we're pushing full speed ahead. I think I've got right now on average 68 men on my crews on a daily basis out there right now. And then when the concrete guys come in, that naturally goes up.
How far along are you going to be by around the 17th of March?
17th of March, I'd have to look at the schedule, but we'll still be working some degree of the roadway between Bayland and Lazy Way, but Center Lane will keep going. And by then, that whole second crew should be working from Flamingo to Albatross, knocking
your
that
problem.
out.
Yeah, well, we'll have to do a little tiptoeing around that. We run a parade down through there at that time of year, so
you have to do it north end for 1 year.
I don't know about
I
that.
don't know.
I
I don't
know,
know about
I
that.
know.
All right, thanks, guys, very much, and happy holidays to everyone. The next item on the agenda is the TDC project proposal for fiscal year 2021. Allison? Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How is everyone today?
Good. I'm good.
So I submitted before you an approximate request on values for the next fiscal year. The grant will open up in January and will close in February, so I wanted to get some input and consensus on some of the projects. We have no capital projects right now. The only thing that we have is what you see before you is the beach and shoreline maintenance for both the beach access, Mound House, and Newton Beach Park. And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Allison, I don't know if Roger gave you this update, but we both made a substantial pitch about the
Times
Times
Square.
Square, yes, to Commissioner Sandelli. And just so happened to be, we had this beautiful map that Roger brought into the meeting, and I said, look, this is where all these people come. And I said, and the county doesn't consider this a beach access. And Ray Sandelli said, what? And I think even Roger found that a little difficult to believe. So We'll see what happens, but,
All right,
You never
so,
know.
Madam Mayor, as you recall, they said they would backtrack that prior interpretation with the county attorney's office to see if there's some reconsideration that may be appropriate.
Did you ask them to widen a pier too?
yes,
Yes.
we did.
Good for you.
Yes, we did. Yep. Okay, so Bruce, we'll start with you. Anything on TDC?
I think we ought to widen the pier.
Okay. Consider your request noted.
Wraps for metal boxes. We have these utility boxes around, and I saw in the paper the other day, Marco Island they have a beautification advisory committee, according to the paper. And I had some pictures here of wrapped metal boxes, but we were having trouble figuring out how to get them on the screen. But that would be something, as we finish our branding process and maybe come up with an art theme of how we want to do things, that you might be able to take to TDC to.
Yeah, I agree that once we have a marketing branding scheme approved by town council, then as part of the rollout of that, we should be looking for opportunities to put that brand
Wherever we can. find
wherever
spot.
we can that's appropriate. So, I think utility boxes, traffic control boxes, and things of that nature would be appropriate to look at.
The other thing that I had some pictures of are trash cans that have a theme wrapped around them. These are barrel cans, and then I'll say flower pots, potted plant devices that also has a theme of painting
Planters.
around them. Yeah.
Can
What's
we
that?
see this?
Planters, yeah,
Planters.
that'll all be part of the street furniture scheme. That will be an element of the marketing plan.
And I'm presuming we can maybe get some TDC help for that. That's why I'm
If
bringing
if
it
it's on a beach access and it has to do with tourism and something that the people that come to the beaches use, then we can. It just has to fall within the guidelines, and as the town attorney, as the town manager stated, all these are reviewed by the county attorney for eligibility each year.
up. Okay.
Ray, anything? Rexanne?
Yes, and first of all, I want to say this has nothing to do with Allison. We were presented with a list of things that are ineligible for funding, and it sticks in my craw every time I see these things, so I like to mention it. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that the state says that we cannot use TDC money to buy picnic tables, for example. That's something that we've got lots of legislators running. That's one thing I'd like to see our state change, that we can use our TDC funds for things that are really needed and necessary, and that makes sense that we should be able to buy a picnic table at the beach with TDC funds. It's also gone in here, bike paths, beach access security cameras. It's just crazy. So that's my rant about that, number one. Number two, I have an actual item I'd like to add, and I'd like to hopefully get some consensus from my fellow council members to add this. Several years ago, we deleted from our funding the replacement of the Palm Avenue restrooms. I have had many people contact me and indicate that we need more restrooms on the beach. I understand that we do not want to intrude upon the residential neighborhoods, but Palm Avenue is not. It is between the Diamond Head and a
Sterile.
plex kind of thing. It's not in the quiet zone. But it is far from any other restroom on the beach if you're taking a walk on the beach. We, at the time, asked if there was a problem with the Palm Avenue bathrooms. If my memory serves me correctly, the town had not received any complaints for that, and neither had law enforcement received complaints that there was a problem at Palm Avenue. So I would like to hear from my fellow council members if anybody is willing to add this to our TDC request.
Joanne?
Our new phone app is coming out with where the restrooms are, and I'm not in favor of beginning to put them at, other than the parks, which is what all the other communities do, Sanibel, Bonita, all other beach parks, beach communities have the public restrooms at the public beach facilities. And I personally would continue with that policy.
Ray?
I'm trying to picture that, was it a structure? Was it a
Did
structure
you
that
ever
was
go
there?
in one of them? Oh, they're fantastic, but they got some bad press. And
Bathrooms are
neighbors didn't like
fantastic?
them. Yeah.
As memory serves me, they were similar to the ones that are at Crescent Beach now, which are
almost
very
exactly.
nice bathrooms, and they are not unattractive.
Haven't been in those either.
Well, evidently, I
Mr.
have to
Vice
go to the
Mayor?
bathroom more often than you do, Ray. But I also look at this from the point of view that we have families out there with kids. They need to use the bathroom. We were very insistent when a big event came here with the Offshore Roar that they provide bathrooms to people. And yet, we do not do the same thing that we are insisting that people who come to our island do.
I agree with you, Rex.
Thank you. That's one.
Go ahead, Ray.
I think I'd have to take a look at it and see what it is. I'd have to familiarize myself with it first before I can make a decision. If you had a picture of it right here, I'd take a look at it. I'd look at it.
Right here, there's a picture right there.
Okay.
It looks like a little, trailer.
It's right near the bus stop.
And,
Oh, a little trailer, yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty innocuous. It's not a portalet type thing.
No, no.
and where they had it located on Palm Avenue was at that access on the Diamond Head side of the street. And it was highly utilized.
I don't have any problem with that.
We have to check FEMA regulations because I have a lot of the county letters back and forth and whatever about plumbing in the VE zone, et
Yeah,
cetera.
But
So
that's
there's a
why,
lot of
that's why
issues.
it's on a trailer, I think. so
Because
they
it can be moved.
It can be moved.
But it
it's not
still
hard.
has to, is it all self-contained then?
I think so.
So there's no pipe that goes down
I think
for
that's-
emptying of the toilets? How
I
are the
think-
toilets emptied then?
So there's a pipe, but it's all like quick disconnect, kind of like an RV. So when it's a hurricane, we could disconnect it and move it, which is what we typically did when we were under a threat of a hurricane.
So I just want to make a comment because, this is not this is located is not located on a residential street. And Ray, that's where the pushback really came, especially there was one that was planned for the Sterling access. And it was just, the neighbors hated it. I just did not like it at all. And I understood their point of view. But to your point, Joanne, Fort Myers Beach we don't just have parks, we have an enormous amount of beach accesses that these other communities don't have.
Bonita does.
Bonita doesn't have as many as we have,
They
but
have
they
them
do
very
have some.
regularly.
Yeah. Well, I think that
And
this.
don't
parti-
forget, we have to remember,
Mm-hmm.
the streets are not building lots. These are streets. They're not building lots. They are streets dedicated for transportation purposes. I'm just making a point. I don't want to see this proliferate.
And that's the point I want to make, that I don't want anyone to think that this is a move to proliferate them. This is a singular location. Would you agree, Roxanne?
I tried to make that point. that
Okay.
This is not like others that had been proposed. This was one that we already had. It's been tested. It was there. It wasn't a problem. It was really used. I have had business people in the area tell me that since it's been gone, they have people keep coming into their businesses to use their bathrooms because there's no restroom in the area there. And that's not fair to them that they're providing restrooms for the public.
Okay, so Allison, there you go. There's 4 people who feel like that would be a good addition. And thank you. Anything else on this item? If not, we'll move on to the Lanikai to Times Square street lighting.
So Madam Mayor, members of council,
You know what, could I just go back to one
Sure.
thing here? I think that there is, I'm just debating whether or not I say this or not. I'm just going to say this. You know, there is a, I can't remember if it's a goal, whatever, in the comp plan. And I thought about this when Gar Reynolds passed away, because this was surely one of his flags that he constantly waved. Ray, you'll remember this. And it was a discussion early on, and we haven't had it recently, but about acquiring property for public use and public beach access. And there are a couple of locations currently on the island that could create more beach access. And I wonder if there's any inclination from anyone to investigate that.
I'm glad you brought that up, Madam Mayor. It was on my mind, and I didn't know if it was appropriate to talk about it right now,
Well, neither did I.
because I was thinking TDC, but in my mind, I'm thinking Conservation 2020.
Could be
for-
both.
For what,
Talking about a purchase opportunity.
yes.
Talking about a purchase opportunity.
I would
in-
concur to proceed,
In a
to
location.
pursue that.
I mean, what I have in mind is a precise location. Okay.
Well, and I can tell you that I know of at least one, and I think more than one. They're development beach accesses, but their associations are no longer maintaining them. There's one close to Egret Street where the condos have taken over maintaining it. That association might be willing to turn their beach access over to the town.
Rex, I'm talking about an actual lot.
Yeah, me
Oh,
too.
well,
Building
and I'm not
lots.
against that, I'm just saying that to expand the idea, there is no public beach access in this area that I'm discussing, and the one that, it's used by the public anyway, it's not just used by the people.
Roxanne, I
That live
support
there.
your concept too.
We,
So let's talk about this at agenda management, putting it on the
Yep.
agenda.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, go ahead, Roger. Then we're on to the next item. Thank you for that diversion there. It was better than me spilling water all over the place, right? Lonnie Kai to Times Square Lighting.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Well, so we're at a point of the project that we need council direction to move forward. There's a couple of alternatives. One alternative is to leave the existing blue lights. The next alternative is to put what the white LEDs, which is the safety lighting, and you've heard the turtle concerns. The third alternative is to put a combination of white safety lighting and amber LEDs for turtle season. So we would turn off the safety lighting during turtle season, and we would turn on the amber lights during turtle season in that area. And then there's a ancillary issue where the county is requesting a limited development order, which we can't understand why. They've never been requested before, to our knowledge, for street lighting. And but once we have your decision on the policy, we'll work through that issue with our partners. FPL and other folks are here if you have a technical question, but really the policy is what would you like to see out there? And then, of course, we could remove the blue lights, not make a decision now, and just sort of close off the project and come back and revisit in the future. I guess that is always an option as well. So those are the options before you. We're just looking to see how you would like to proceed. We're running out of contract time with the contractor. If you've been down there, you've seen that there are a majority of the sections of sidewalk are complete, and there's a little area that's a compressed dirt area waiting for this decision adjacent to the blue lights. So other than finishing off a couple of driveways, which the contractor will be able to do in the next week or two, they're complete other than waiting for this decision.
Okay. Bruce, I'm going to start with you because this is, lighting is your thing.
Great. So could the FP&L guy come up, please?
Good morning.
To say there's an FPL gal too, so.
Oh, okay.
FPI guy and FPL gal.
Eric calling FPL.
Hi, Eric. Nice to meet you.
Good morning. Charlotte Miller with FPL External Affairs.
Good morning, Charlotte.
How are you?
Good.
So, before we get into the specifics here, explain to us the difference between the utilization of the amber light versus the white, I'm going to call it the white LED light, just for lack of a better term, in concept of who will pay for what and what the wattages, or sorry, what the energy consumptions are between the two types of lights, and will they qualify for the government programs or not?
Back those questions. Regarding the white light, I believe what was investigated through the lighting study that was contracted had recommended a 118 watt fixture. The amber approved, FWC approved turtle light is about 92 watts. From a lumen standpoint, the white light at 118 watts is about 15,500, where the amber is about 3,700 lumens. I guess you had multiple questions, so.
Yeah, no, that's the perfect answer I was looking for.
Okay.
So what that tells us is that you have to use 5 times the energy to get the same amount of lumens, roughly, 4 to 5 times.
The way an amber light, and the reason you're getting that amber is over it's a coating, that's actually put on the LED chipset, so that cuts down on the efficiency pretty significant.
So the 92 watt amber light doesn't qualify for the Federal Carbon Reduction Act, is that true?
That is not a program that I'm directly familiar with.
But that's what we've been able to determine to date.
Right, but the white light does.
Yes.
So we get free white lights and we pay big bucks for the amber lights.
That's what we've been able to determine to date.
And we've been told that the white light is engineered such that it can be positioned so that the source of the light is not seen at the beach.
There is the opportunity that we offer backside shielding for that light, which will limit the amount of backlight. It's essentially, it is a aluminum shield similar to, I believe, what may have been installed on some of the existing high-pressure sodium lights.
My understanding also is that the design of the white light is focused such that when you mount it on the arm, it shines brightly on the road section and not out from the road. It doesn't go up into the night sky as well.
That is correct. It is rated as a zero uplight fixture, and the lights that are offered on our catalog are a type 3 pattern, which does push most of the light to the sides and to the front, with a limited amount of light coming to the backside.
So-
It is still there, but it is limited.
So didn't we just have one of these new styles of lights installed? I believe it was Sterling, and we had a turtle disorientation.
I'm not familiar directly with that disorientation.
It was a pretty big deal around here, but it was one of the new lights that was just installed.
Is that true that it was Sterling, by the way? Are we accurate at that?
Yes, yeah, I believe it was. What I don't know is if it had the shield on it. Does anyone know that answer? Yeah, that's the part that I didn't know.
But, yeah. So, go ahead, Bruce.
My point is that if the lights are installed properly, there's probably no need for the amber lights at Crescent Beach. I'm not against putting them there if you want to put them there, but I think that the LED lights, based on what we've been told in my discussion with the manufacturer and other people, that, these lights are designed to be specific in how they broadcast their beam, and if they're installed properly, you shouldn't have an issue. I had another point I was going to make. Some people were saying, well, the quote-unquote white light is a problem and that it causes sleeping disorders and all that stuff. That also is somewhat of a myth. You know what, the color code, I think other light was proposed was either 4,100 or 4,300, something like that, 42. In the 4,000 range, that's the same color temperature range of moonlight.
Same color temperature range as moonlight?
And again, you know, people, these are very advanced lights compared to what they were just a few years ago. They've really engineered a lot into them, according to the U.S. government and others. So, but that leads to the question of what are we going to do with the rest of Estero Boulevard? This idea of putting in amber lights is not financially feasible, and it doesn't provide good safety lights. It's a proven fact that the white light is the safe light versus the amber light. No matter how many amber lights you put down, it doesn't have the reflectance, or whatever they call that, the illumination factor for safety as the white lights do. So that's what I have to say so far. Next.
So your option for staff guidance is number one? No.
I'm going to pay for the amber lights here.
Yeah.
How much is it?
I don't have that number at my fingertips, I'm sorry. I could probably find out, though.
Bruce, what is your preference? Your preference
My
is?
preference is to put in the new LED lights and let it work.
Okay.
What number is that? 4?
It's not really any of these.
Like I said, if you want to put the amber lights in, depending upon their cost, I mean, if they cost $1 million to put in 7 amber lights, it wouldn't be $1 million. Rob said it would be $10,000 times 70. It's probably going to be over $100,000 to put in those lights, would be my guess.
Ray, your thoughts?
Roger, what's the downside to leaving the aesthetic blue lights in place? What's the downside to that?
They basically, for all intents and purposes, have reached their service life, and unfortunately, the manufacturer no longer manufactures the parts, and when we do have to go out and find parts, we're pretty much at the mercy of the person who has them. So, you know, our strategy is to replace all those blue lights. The question is with what?
Okay. So it's a matter of finding the parts and then paying whatever the market bears?
Yeah, well, there's such a limited supply, pretty much if you need it, it's whatever the person wants for it, or you can't get it, you know, so we're really negotiating or purchasing disadvantage whenever we need a part.
Replacing those lights with the redevelopment or the redoing of the Times Square renovation project, that should be part of
San
that.
Carlos, all the way down
San
at the
Carlos, all the way
Bayside
down to
Park is all
Bayside
part of that project to you know,
So are you
I'm going to
thinking
say
it makes sense?
to get out of the 60s
Right.
look, if you will.
So are you saying it makes sense to leave those in place until that whole project is done?
Well, that's what I was thinking. I mean, if
makes sense to
if
me,
it
too.
wasn't prohibitive, I mean, how much are we going to spend? I mean, even if it was $1,500 a light, you know, that's not a ton of money, you know, but, I mean, it makes sense to me to leave them until we do the whole thing, you know, do it all in one shot. But I'm open to listening to further discussion.
I'm agreeing with Ray at this point. Go ahead, Rexanne.
First of all, I'm bothered to hear my esteemed fellow counselor to use the word myth when he's talking about lighting studies. The lighting study that I read that had some of these concerns contained in it came from the American Medical Association.
They also endorsed cigarettes and sugar at one time.
At one time, and now they are not.
Hey, let me get out of the way. Go at it.
Like before, when I said that we we made people who came to this town, you provide bathrooms, and we should be standing up to the standards we expect of others. We expect our residents to provide turtle-friendly lighting, especially amber lighting. We give people tickets. They are paying fines. I think it would be hypocritical of the town to put in lighting that's suggested. I am against turning the lights on and off because we've tried that in the past and it hasn't worked. The shielding has been tried in the past and it hasn't worked. I have to indicate to you that I don't have a great deal of trust in what FPL is providing. I have, in the past council term, I had exchanges with them, and they were not particularly cooperative or helpful. And recently they came to us and said, yeah, we want to put in a bunch of new LED lights, and these are going to work. And so I voted for it. And not long after that happened, we had a turtle disorientation. So they tell us it's supposed to work, and then it doesn't.
Roxanne, are you sure that that disorientation was relative to that light?
That's what I have been told by several sources. I believe it even came from Chad here on the staff as well.
Okay.
So I also note right in the middle of our page, if you read what we've been provided, there are the words, FPL declined providing signed and sealed plans. Maybe that isn't their job to do, but
I'd be happy to address that when you're finished speaking.
oh, why don't you address it now?
Okay, absolutely. There's a Florida statute that we can provide you the number if you'd like, that states that public utilities are not required to have professional engineers submit plans and drawings. For that to be signed and sealed, it does need to be by a professional engineer. We have spoken to community development in Lee County. This is actually the first time we've run into an issue like this throughout our service territory, not just locally. And they have submitted it to their attorney's department for review. We were hoping to have some information this morning for you, but it just went to them within the last couple days. It has not come back yet. So we're very hopeful that they will interpret it the way it always has been throughout our service territory with other counties and cities, but we're waiting to hear.
Counselor?
And that may be the point, but the point I'm trying to get to here is that I'm saying that maybe we should just step away from FPL, and you know, God bless you. But you have something that you say you can provide X and Y. But when I look online, I see zillions of possibilities of lighting things that may be cheaper than what you're saying. You give us these two choices. Well, maybe we should look at other choices besides what FPL is providing, and it would save us money in the long run. So I'd like to open our scope.
Okay.
As far as, I don't know why we'd leave the blue lights in place if it costs that much to fix them. So I'm kind of, I could probably be convinced about it, but I'm
Have there
not sure.
been any repairs to any of these?
Well, yeah, the answer is yes. Not necessarily the ones, the specific ones we're talking about, but the other ones. And, you know, you've probably seen, I see the emails, why does it take so long to you know, light's been out so long, why can't you get it fixed? And it's a matter of tracking down the part and then trying to reach a, you know, negotiate a price with the person for the replacement part. So that's the issue with the blue lights. You know, I think frankly, you know, if you want to keep the blue lights in place for a year and punt till we have a better idea what lights we're going to put in on Times Square and San Carlos and see if those
Or even
are.
to address Roxanne's idea of perhaps there are, with all due respect to FPL, perhaps there are other alternatives for island lighting.
There are, but I think the genesis of this, you know, and the lighting study started before I was here, but I think the genesis of this was how to upgrade the lighting structure, and when we were looking at the white LED safety lights, basically free. So we can explore other alternatives, and I'm sure there are thousands out there, but those won't be necessarily free, but we could look at it and see if we can figure out a way to get them qualified for the federal program or not. So I think that's where we started at. Here's where we're at. And since I'm speaking, I'm going to just say this to the council. I think Council Aspas makes a very good point. We place demands on a lot of folks to do a lot of things that we say by ordinance and other regulation are the right things to be done. And, because we're looking at $100,000 to put up a combination of white and yellow LEDs, perhaps there's some hesitancy, but, maybe we should, if the concern is LEDs, then the concern is LEDs. But if the concern is the money, maybe we should just be biting the bullet and setting the example of doing the right thing. But that's for you all to decide.
What do you mean doing the right thing?
Putting the combination of white lights and LEDs in.
You know what? I would almost guarantee you that if we were to do that, so you're going to come to the bottom of the bridge in the most high-profile moment of Fort Myers Beach, and you're going to see all these lights. I think people are going to hate it. And then when we go to the trouble of telling them, well, it's for turtles, it's for this, it's for that, I think aesthetically it's going to. I don't think that's. I think there's got to be other options. I don't like this option at all.
There's got to be other options.
I don't like it. There you have it.
Fair enough.
And I'm not sure, because if it was very clear about, well, this is the right thing to do to be whatever, okay, but that's still not very clear to me. Or maybe there are better ways or a better way to do what's best. Go ahead, Joanne, sorry.
I have a question for FPL. In a letter from Robin Trindle, who's biological administrator for FWC, she says, like the Cree Amber LED fixture that's available from FPL. So is the Cree Amber LED fixture available from FPL?
Yes, that's the fixture we've been discussing.
Okay. And then and in our green sheet, it says you notify the town that if an amber fixture is selected, you don't have a time frame for the poles or lights. What does that mean? Why?
Time frame would be based on, since there were changes made from the original agreement that was executed, that kind of reset the clock from a material order standpoint. We're normally right around 12 to 16 weeks. So that's when
So it would be twice that? I mean,
12 to 16 weeks is a good expectation to
on
answer
the
that.
amber Cree lights.
That is correct.
So that's really not like an indefinite period of time. Okay.
Quarter, basically.
I agree with basically what you have said, Roxanne, and Roger. And we have to be good stewards of our environment, and we have to do what's right, not necessarily always what's convenient or cheaper. And Roger hit it. We did plastic bags, plastic straws. Those are very convenient. We don't do those. Fertilizers are very convenient. We don't do those. Electric vehicles and e-bikes on the beach would be a lot of fun. Golf carts on the beachfront would be fun. We don't do that. And pouring dirty water down the Calusa Hatch is very convenient for the state. We don't want that anymore. And we have to do what's right. We have to do it right for the lights. I'm a person who lives on the beachfront. I know what it is to try to live the lifestyle of amber lights and keeping my drapes closed, and we work very hard at it. And I have neighbors who have received $40,000 to $60,000 of fines or threats of fines, and they're turning off the streetlights behind because in areas where people are crossing because of the disorientations. It can't continue. We have to do, from my point of view, a comprehensive plan, the entire length of the boulevard, all nice, and we have to figure out what that is, and it has to be turtle-friendly and human-friendly. We talk about during turtle season. Turtle season is half the year. Turtle season is in a couple of months. We're talking about 50% of the time of the year. And I don't mean to be unkind, but you're talking about $100,000 here or something. We blow up $65,000 in fireworks So, for one event, so $100,000, big deal. Now, the aesthetic blue lights, I would leave them in for now till we know what the heck we're doing and do it right. And I look at the Times Square lights, they're the same as the blue lights are there. I did go around and I saw, one of the blue lights is gone and a wire's hanging. That's not attractive. It may or may not be safe. It seems to me that you can rob lights from Times Square as you need to fill them in, because we're going to be replacing the lights at Times Square. As far as parts go, maybe they're different sizes. I couldn't tell from a distance if they were exactly the same scale lights or not. But at any rate, so I'm for number one for now. We need to do this right in a comprehensive plan. And for now, until we get that right, I would like to work with FPL. If FPL can provide the proper amber Cree lights in a time frame within what we want, that would be great. I don't have a problem with FPL, and if you can work with us, we're not the only beachfront community that is having these issues with you, and these are state. I get very frustrated. These are state and federal regulations. I don't understand why it's so difficult to get the county, the state, FDOT, everybody to work together with a community who's trying to do the right thing for the state wildlife regulations. We shouldn't be fighting.
That shouldn't be difficult.
It should not be this
agree.
difficult.
I agree.
So let's be the model town for how we get this right so other towns can get it right too.
Okay, so we're going with option one, leave the blue lights in place at the time. Okay?
Great.
Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you, Eric.
You're welcome. And may I just add, Rexanne, I'm so sorry that you've had some experiences that you feel are negative with FPL. I'd certainly like to rectify that, so your experience is positive in the future. So if you don't mind, I'll contact you in the very near future to talk. Thank you.
Let me
Thank
ask
you, Charlotte.
another question while you're still there. Is it possible to put dimmers on these lights?
The technology is available. At this point in time, it is not something that FPL offers on our catalog of fixtures.
That was a very corporate answer, Eric. It is not, but, okay, so no. so no.
That translates to no.
Yeah, translates to no.
Don't
No
shoot,
right now.
It was
don't
very
shoot the
good.
messenger.
No, not at all, not at all.
He wishes he had the pay grade higher making this
Not at all.
decision. He's the messenger.
Okay,
Let me just make one other comment.
go ahead.
And it's to Rexanne's point about the American Motorcycles, Medical Association, sorry. It is true
picking at you.
that blue lights affect people. I have no doubt about that. However, if you read the research, it has to do with time exposure. There's 5 different ways that your eyes receive lights, and these lights move all over the place. It's the spectrum, something or another, that how the light is designed that has an impact. These street lights, with the duration of people's exposure to them, are not going to keep you awake at night, would be my best guess. And that's the myth I was talking about, that when they blanket all streetlights as saying it's a problem. I don't disagree with these kind of lights. If you had them on at your home at night for 6 hours before you go to bed, you probably have a hard time going to sleep. But that's my point. The streetlights aren't the problem.
Anything else?
Not these new streetlights aren't the problem, no.
Charlotte, Eric, thank you very much for your time. Happy holidays to you.
Happy holidays.
Merry Christmas.
Too.
Next item on the agenda is the Adopt a Tree Policies and Procedures Program. And Rexanne, I'll start with you since you've reinitiated this, and thank you for that.
Actually, I think Chad is the one who,
well,
Excuse
Chad-
me one second. Could we have the FP&L guy stay here just for a minute for this discussion, if you don't mind?
For the trees?
Yes.
Okay. When he says FPL guy, Charlotte, he means you too.
And FP&L people,
Folks,
persons,
as in news
professionals.
guys, as in
Okay.
news guys.
Go ahead, Rexanne.
well, I was just saying, I think this has been mostly developed by Chad, and I give him all credit for that. I came up with the idea, but it was handed off to Chad, and I'm pleased with what I see here. The only thing that I would suggest adding to it is it does seem to be limited to residential property owners, And I'd like to see that the nonprofits like the Women's Club or a church could apply to get a tree, as well as business owners, not renters, but the business owner of a property could apply to get a tree possibly. But that's not a make or break thing. It was just the thing I was going to suggest. But I would say it looks like Chad did a great job. I'm very excited about it. I plan on being here to help and however I can to hand out trees and publicize the program, et cetera. Chad, do you have anything to say?
Morning, Chad.
Morning. No, just looking for your input. I'll take that on board and redraft.
I'd like
or
to,
as you'll,
if there are a couple other council members who agree with me.
sure.
Joanne?
I'm so excited. While you were off and I was on, I asked about this and why we stopped it and the whole Tree City USA thing. So Chad, thank you for stepping up and doing this. And the thing that happened in the past, so on packet page 13 at the very bottom, where it talks about the process, 1, 2, 3, 4, what happened in the past and why it was stopped is because we did this and people were taking the trees off island and the plants off island. So I would add a number 5, and that is that the person needs to sign that it's going to stay on the island.
Ma'am.
Okay, and then the other, and I like what you said about the nonprofits. I agree with that. I think that would be great. And the other thing would be, can we get to be a Tree City USA again? We let that drop.
I don't
Go
know
ahead.
if
I
Chad
just
has
wanna
looked this
talk
up or
about that.
not, but I looked it up, and it would cost us a lot of money. This is an alternative way to make sure we're getting trees planted without being part of that program that costs us a lot of money.
Okay.
So that's my last finding on it. Chad may know something different than I do, but it seems like
I
this
believe
is a
that's
better
correct.
way.
I believe that's correct. I think.
They have all these requirements that,
You know, I mean, I think the sign recognition of Tree City USA is very important, but I think this is really more of a boots on the ground type approach to getting trees and beautifying Fort Myers Beach, town of Fort Myers Beach.
Perfect. And Roxanne, thank you for the leadership on this. That's great. Thank you. That's all for me.
Ray, do you have any comments on this?
I'm all for more trees. I was on the council, I believe we were originally, Anita, when we were a tree city, and of course, that's also encouraged in the comprehensive plan, and that was a big part of it, as I recall, was the hope of creating canopies on the streets and so forth, and which is absolutely beautiful in a lot of areas, and if we could continue to encourage that, that'd be great. Thank you.
Bruce, any comments on this?
Yep. I'm very concerned about this program because the trees that are suggested here are what I would call medium to large trees with spreads of 50 feet, heights of 50 feet. And the description says they must be 20 feet from the roadway. Well, FP&L says it must be 50 feet from the roadway, or from the power line, which is not at the roadway, which is on the right-of-way. And I would say you don't have a lot of houses around here that's, if they have a power line in their front yard, can use these things. And I'm very concerned that I've mentioned several times is that we have plants out of control on this island today that are interfering with power lines and are very dangerous in hurricanes, and they ought to be taken care of in some fashion. And I think this ruling is not good enough to protect the power lines. Now, if a guy doesn't have power lines in the house, then I guess it doesn't much matter, then that's fine. But if you have power lines, it has to be 50 feet back.
The rule is you have to have, if you plant a tree, it has to be 50 feet from a power line?
Well, that's what it says here, minimum setback, large trees. That's the FP&L. That's why I asked them to stay, just in case you had any comment. Please, you have a comment?
Thank you, Charlotte.
So Bruce is referring to our Right Tree, Right Place program. And as I know you all are aware, trees that are very beautiful when they are small and are planted, grow into even more beautiful large trees, but then they get into our power lines and they drastically affect reliability. So we have certain guidelines. What he is referring to is for large trees, and there's a list on our website, but we can also set up a meeting with myself and our vegetation specialist with y'all for large trees. And there's a category I'm looking at. I apologize, I'm looking at it on my iPhone right now. It is a 50-foot minimum setback. For trees that are considered 30 or medium, it's a 30-foot setback.
Charlotte, does it give you an example of what those trees are in those
Yes,
categories?
on this, I can't speak off the top of my head, but yes, I will send you this link. It has many examples of trees.
Okay.
And it should give you everything you need. Another thing that we all need to be very aware of, here in Southwest Florida, is the span of palm fronds. The wind, as you know, takes them, and those spans are so long. So for that, even though
We don't have any palms in this program. The whole idea
You do
is
not?
We've
Okay.
got too many palm trees and not enough other kinds of
Okay,
trees. so-
that's good. So what happens is people become very unhappy when we have to cut their trees, and we understand that, but we also have a responsibility to provide power and high reliability. So we'll be glad to provide that information. Would you like me to send it to all of you and Roger, or who?
Yeah, that would be perfect,
Okay.
Charlotte. Thank you.
And then we'll be happy to set up a meeting if you'd like to do that.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Let me ask you a
Yes.
question about that. So if someone has the streets here, the power lines here, and their yards here, and they have a tree that's growing into the power lines, what do? You just trim it, or do you say, take the tree out?
It varies. We often trim them. If it's going to be a repeat offender on a pretty regular basis, we at times will remove the tree with the homeowner's permission. There are a lot of individual circumstances that go along with that.
Because, I mean, it's a huge problem here, I think.
It is.
And
And
I know
you're
it's-
not alone. It's a huge problem everywhere.
That's right. It's a huge problem in California and Cleveland, Ohio, and everywhere. But we have more hurricanes here than they do. They have ice storms and fires. It's a different problem, but
We do have a vegetation cycle for our feeders. We trim, and those feeders are the main lines going to the neighborhoods or businesses, the larger lines. We trim those every 3 years. For our laterals, which are the smaller lines going into the neighborhood, it's a 6-year cycle, although we do trim more frequently in some areas because some growth is faster than others. So we have that cycle, but it still doesn't get everything all the time.
Anita, do you think we could maybe have Rexanne and Chad work with FPL to just tighten this up and make sure it's just right and we're ready to go? Do you think that's a good idea, Rexanne, or?
Sure.
then how are you going to verify that the people plant it in the right spot? Or you're just going to take their word for it, I guess?
Well, we were trying to make this thing pretty painless.
I know.
But we can, put as many levels of scrutiny as you deem appropriate. At the end of the day, if a person plants a tree in the wrong spot, they knock out their own power. Yeah, they're gonna knock out their neighbors too, but they're
Yeah,
gonna knock out
exactly.
theirs.
They knock out many people.
They're gonna knock out, the first one they're gonna knock out is their own. I think one of the unfortunate situations is that you start saying you can't plant within X feet of this and Y feet of that and Z feet of that. The next thing you do is, needed a picture you sent me, won't be the tree coming through the park bench, it'll be coming through your living room couch, because it's about to be about the only spot that you could plant a tree in. So I guess what I'm really saying is none of this, there's really nothing that we can do legislatively that will replace good judgment. So if a person plants a tree in a bad spot, it's going to be, inevitably, it's going to be a problem. What we can do is encourage people to pick the medium-sized trees. versus things that have larger spans, to try to make it where we have less potential problems with FPL lines or any other overhead lines. But, if you have the limiting factor of native trees, you don't want pond, you start putting all these things together, you get to the point where you just can't put together a program. So at the end of the day, what I'm going to tell you is that we're going to have to, at some point, we can't legislate the whole thing. We're going to have to rely on good judgment and.
Yep.
But what I was thinking was like on page 29, see this one little picture? Maybe you can, the town can just sort of adapt that and list what the large tree is. And that way the property owner would have just a guidance. So you say, okay, pick your tree, but these are our guidelines. So should you pick? But you just need to list which ones are the large, which are the medium, and whatever of the list of
We're
the
only
trees.
offering 2 tree possibilities, so it should be
Okay.
real easy to do that when we
What
hand
are
them out.
those 2 tree
Gumbo
possibilities?
limbo and sea
Sea
grape.
grape.
Okay.
Well, actually, there's 4 trees, because then in April, there's 2 different ones, mahogany and paradise tree.
And I guess mahogany would probably be one of the ones that, has a little bit larger growth potential.
Because I don't know what a.
I'll talk to our vegetation folks about it. And I know that 50-foot setback can seem extreme, but I can give you a personal example from my home. I have a tree, an oak tree that was built, it's probably been there 80 years. So we're talking a long time, but my lot is 50 feet wide and it spans more than that 50 feet. So we have to look far into the future when we give these setback requirements so that we can continue to maintain reliability.
And just the other side of that picture, there are people who are responsible. I know a
Yes.
lot of people who have, there's one right next door. Chapel by the Sea has a gumbo limbo tree out front. They trim it every year. It doesn't get huge. People, if they want to have a tree in their yard and keep it trimmed, they should be able to do that. By the way, the gumbo limbo is our town tree.
I have a gumbo limbo. and
We have
a
one in
tree.
our front yard here, too.
So, let me.
Yes, we do.
So if the idea is that we're going to have some more work done on this, I just want to throw in that I also had a concern about Roxanne, you've been at my house a million times. If I were to take a sea grape, I have sea grapes on my back fence line. I couldn't plant one there because it wouldn't be 7 feet from, or 10 feet from the rear property line.
Right, and sea grape can be used as a hedge, and people trim them as hedges.
And that's what I do.
So we can't be unreasonably restricting where people put these,
But
because they may have a purpose for them.
Right, but that is one of the provisions here, so that would put me out for a sea grape. And then the 20 feet from the edge of the road or the sidewalk, at least as Ray was talking back when we had this idea early on in the comp plan, we were, and there's even an illustration in the comp plan, the idea was to create canopied streets. But if you're putting if you're planting a tree 20 feet from a sidewalk or the street right-of-way, you will never create a canopied road.
Yeah, it's not from the right-of-way. It's the reason we went from the edge of the road, because as you know, most of the cases, our right-of-ways are wider than the edge of the road. And all of you who have walked the project with me when we're trying to do something in the right-of-way and we're trying to, go around the existing trees and things like that, we don't want to compound that problem prospectively. So we felt that if the trunk was 20 feet away from the edge of the road, it would give us a safety margin of keeping it out of the right-of-way, should we have to do right-of-way work in the future for existing lines or future lines. We want to make sure that when they were planting the tree, that they didn't hit any of our existing lines
Yeah,
and
I get
and
all
of
that, but if the purpose is to create shade and create a canopied, I'm using that word purposefully, a canopied walkway on the sidewalks and whatever, you won't accomplish that. You'll have, for example, I'm just thinking about my house, the only place I'd be able to plant a tree would be just on the edge of my pool in the middle of my yard.
Well, the one thing I would say about your house, Anita, is you already have lovely vegetation. I'm looking at the people that have big barren spaces, and I'd like them to get a tree in there.
Okay, so pick a big barren space. If you pick a big barren
The
space.
Women's Club has all the space, and they don't have enough trees around there. So I'm trying to get trees into areas where people don't have trees.
I'd just ask you to rethink these two limitations. Now, let me ask you the other limitation I'd like to ask you to rethink. One per person. So you're going to get how many trees? 250 trees? With 250 trees, at least make some provision that if 250 people don't show up to get a tree, you have an ability to give those trees out to some more people, because I think in the past, we have had more trees than we've had people.
Certainly.
Okay.
Well, the idea is if the turnout is less than the amount of trees we have available, we're working, one of the conditions with the vendor is that they would take those trees back and give us a credit towards future opportunities. So, if we don't get the turnout we hope for, we would continue to use that inventory prospectively.
Let's just take it, like, they'll use the Women's Club as an example. Let's say you have 110 people show up, and 110 people have taken their individual trees, and you have all those and let's say the Women's Club was one of those people, and why, if the Women's Club was willing to take, maybe they'd like to use some sea grapes as some sort of border or hedge or whatever, why wouldn't you say, okay, come on, Women's Club, it didn't have a big impact? Do you see what I'm saying? I just think that we need to be flexible with this concept.
Well, I think if that's what the council would like us to do,
Okay.
what we were trying to do is create the biggest spread, not necessarily create a situation where one entity, whether it's a not-for-profit or a commercial property or whomever, got the majority of the trees that we were offering, since we're paying for them. But we can do whatever the council thinks is appropriate.
Okay, any more comments on this? So, Charlotte, you're going to get us that info, and
Get it to you this afternoon.
And we're going to do a little more
Back
work
at
on
the January
this.
M&P?
Great.
Okay,
Thank you.
as
I
you
love
wish.
this idea. All right, thank you very much. And now I think the FPL guy is free to leave, and you too, Charlotte.
Thank you very much.
Guy and gal.
Thank you all very much. Next, does anybody want to take a break, or are you good to keep going?
break.
Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break. It's 11:22. I'm sorry, it's 10:22 if I'm still on.
Don't freak out Gary now.
It looks like the party's going to be late.
We'll move on to our next item, which is the discussion about guidelines and regulations for murals. Joanne, I'm going to have you lead this off.
Okay, I'm going to try to make this short but sweet. I really liked packet page 47, that COCO ordinance. Overall, the only thing, I liked that it's, I would add about the zoning districts, like I noticed on page 45, in theirs, they have a not located highway or commercial zoning district, whatever. I would have it not in residential zoning districts where it's visible from another residence. So that if you have it low and small around your pool, or some of them are doing them on the beachfront like Big Turtles, that's not facing somebody else's residence. So I might say not in residential zoning districts where visible from, and then I would make sure that there's adding lighting reference and no electronics. And then we might add something about maintaining per standards of the IPMC. But other than that, I actually kind of liked the Cocoa Beach ordinance. So that would be my comments.
Bruce, you have anything on this one?
I just want to make sure I understand what Joanne was saying. You're talking about line 36 on page 47?
6. Yeah, I like that, actually. But I'm just talking about the entire ordinance, is what I was saying, is that I liked it other than the fact that when you compare it to the ordinance on page 45, they reference zoning districts, and I would reference the zoning districts. So that was what I was talking about, and then concerns. But I like that on page 47. That didn't bother me, but I forgot on page 49, at the very bottom, type 2 murals may be allowed if the graphics words, I would cross out the term words, the graphics and or symbols referencing the established product, whatever. But did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. So I would have to get rid of the word wording in line 36 as well somehow. I think we're not having wording in them, was
Let me
what
ask
we
you
had
a
talked
question
about.
on wording, though, because I thought about this last night. What if through our branding, we have a great slogan? Or whatever you want to call that. And there were a building, a commercial building that wanted to paint a beautiful mural and include or incorporate that slogan.
That leads right into what one of my comments was going to be. The thing I would add to whatever statute that we decide to work with is I'd like to see a variance possibility in there if someone had a special circumstance that they could come to council and say, hey, I'd like to do X, Y, Z, and this is why I'm a special circumstance.
Yeah, I don't oppose that. That's great. And your concept is good too. I mean, I can understand if we.
Whoa, whoa. Sorry to interrupt, but we were very cautious not to keep murals and signs separate. And the way you do that is by eliminating logos and words. Because once you get into signage, you now get into people, and the town attorney can give you some advice about this, about First Amendment rights for people to say whatever they want to say, and that means language and symbols you may not like. And, you know, even if you try to control it by special exception, you could theoretically run into some problems. So to try to keep the program clean and get it going and whatever, we were trying to make sure we kept the issue very well contained. So
I understand that, and I'd be willing to backtrack off my position about the variance thing and just say never any words, no matter what, even within a variance. But I'd still like to see a special circumstance be able to come in and say, hey, this is why we'd like to do 100% of our building wall rather than 80%, for example.
it's a very fair and
So,
appropriate comment.
Yeah, so I'd still like to see the variance thing, but I get the words thing, I'll back off from that entirely, yeah.
And just FYI, in this one ordinance, it wasn't restricted. You can use the whole wall, just not 80%.
Yeah, I wouldn't restrict that. I didn't like the restriction at all.
Just FYI, just since you used it as an example, but I agree with you, Roxanne, about a variance option.
And I
and
guess
no words. Yeah.
the other thing I would add is that my experience with adopting other people's ordinances is that when we adopt another ordinance and we just copy it, we always seem to have a problem with it later. So the thing that I found is there's good stuff in all of these, and I'd like to see what John or whoever is working on this pulls out and puts together for us. Because I would prefer not to just copy another city's ordinance.
Of course.
So I'm not going to pick one.
Counselor, we agree with that, and I guess one of the reasons we have these, so you could pick out the elements of a particular ordinance you like, and perhaps, or indicate ones that you don't, or if it's,
So
to the extent you
what I will do
have any
is,
impact.
I will get together with John or whoever's working on this, because
Fair enough.
there's a lot here to talk about, and I don't want to bore everybody with individual thoughts.
Thank you, Roxanne. Bruce, did you have anything else?
Well, so we would have a committee approve all things? Is that the idea?
No.
No? That's what it says in here.
There's different ones.
Well, I'm talking about page 49, the one that Joanne
Yeah,
referred to.
Cocoa
that-
Beach has a committee. But
So
you know,
if we don't have a committee, is somebody going to approve the murals? Was that the
My
plan?
recommendation would be that we have a set of criteria that you're comfortable with, and then beyond that, we would follow Councilor Hasafas's suggestion that someone could come in for a special exception and request something that doesn't fit that very neat set of parameters that we'll develop.
Well, I think you are missing the ingenious nature of people and their paintings. And see if it passes your muster. Is that something we like? I mean,
May have been back in the 70s.
no,
and that's a mild one. There's some really neat
Yeah.
monsters on some of those.
No, I don't think that's,
So it fits this bill, though.
it does. And you're right, there does need to be some
So
sort
I'm
of.
just, pass it back, please. I
Yep.
gotta have my phone.
Yeah, I like the ones that, I sent Joanne of the site, some with the lady with the umbrella. And yes, it's an aesthetic that is going to be subjective. No?
But it meets the criteria. There's no symbols, there's no.
Well, but we
no
can't
words.
have subjective standards. We can't just say, we don't like your mural, but we like your mural. I don't think that's appropriate.
So there needs to be something that says, look, just so people know what this is kind of a weird pink wall with some very freakish looking baby monsters. And one of them has a cell phone in their hand. It's just it's not something somebody's going to want to look at here. So maybe there needs to be some sort of criteria that stipulates that murals will be of a nature, of a beach town nature, of a coastal nature, of something like that. Because
No,
we
I
don't
think
want
we
to
could
see.
say, we could work on that, but it's clearly, beach themed, Southwest Florida marine environment, those types of things.
Something like that.
We can provide those types of guidelines in there.
Okay, is there anybody else that has anything on this item? I'm just gonna say I agree that I liked the Cocoa Beach one the best, but there are pieces of each of them I guess I could have taken. On the town's recommendation, I did not like the 80% of one of four walls. I don't know that you'd want to limit it if somebody wanted to paint their entire building, a commercial building, for example. I don't know why you'd limit that. I think it could be something extraordinary. I mean, I'm thinking specifically of the Winds building. you know, or Mango Bay, they're two big buildings there on the corner of the street. You know, that could be
Or
something really
let's
interesting.
think about the Mermaid. That's almost
Or
an
the Mermaid,
iconic
exactly.
building on
It
there,
is.
and it
It
wraps
is.
around it.
And the way it was even before when Bruce had it, yes. So it could be,
Think about the Lani Kai.
absolutely, that certainly is iconic. So I just think that this needs to be broadened, or not have such a stringent limitation. Okay, does anybody else have any comments on this?
Just
It's
one
gonna
thing,
still
can
needs
you
work.
reiterate then, town attorney, or do we have zoning in progress then on, with regard to murals at this point?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Great. You know, just to touch on Bruce's question about who approves it, you know, that might be a thing for Crab. Your Crab could,
Crab or
Crab,
Murph or
yeah,
somebody.
could be the. Okay, on to the next item, which is a strategic plan review.
What, sorry, it could be LPA or HPB because they already do historic signs, they do historic structures, and maybe they could tie on, but sorry.
Yep. Okay, so let's go on to the strategic plan review, and Roxanne, I'll start with you.
I don't have a lot to say about this, with the exception that I would have added on page 52, under number 3, ensure neighborhoods clean, safe environment, and vibrant, excuse me. I would add, continue to improve our relationship and communication with LCSO.
Why don't I see that, Roxanne?
Number 3 on page 52.
Oh, yes, got it.
We're talking about safety in our neighborhoods, and I think it would be good to have written in writing that we need to continue to improve our relationship and improve our communication with LCSO.
With Lee County Sheriff.
Okay.
I just want to talk for a second here about, well, you know what, I'll wait till we get to agenda management. Let me just mark
That be item C on that list then?
it was.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Joanne? Rowan.
I'm trying to decide how much we really wanted to comment on this.
I guess I would just say that if there is something that you either have a question about or like,
Okay, all right, so then packet page 56.
yep,
Item number 2, about the PIO, I think we decided that was going to be an event planner. Can we just look at that description and make sure that it's correct for what the person we're looking for?
I think it's already been advertised. and
Right,
there-
so just update and make sure
Yeah,
that's.
I think it encompasses this and is actually broader on the social media side or whatever, but it's underway.
Okay,
And then on page 56, or 55, the monitor FEMA mapping and CRS rating, it just made me, I think there's a new map out. I'm wondering if we can all be updated and the community can understand what that means to their properties. And then on landscape, streetscape, on page 53, I think we've already done a create calls. How about the liens? Number 3, haven't we sort of already looked at that and talked about that? And I'm not sure if that really belongs in there. I guess I'd ask.
What page, I'm sorry?
Page 53, maintain
Maintain reserves.
reserves, item A, with regard to liens. Does that need to stay in there or be
That was a
removed
big-
at this
That was a
point?
big conversation about how are we going to collect on liens, and that was never resolved.
So,
Well, what we're doing, so we're in the process of identifying what we believe are the 10 best cases to pursue legal action to enforce our liens. And we'll bring those to council because those, to go forward and do that has cost implications. And of course, you know, there's recovery of the lien costs and all that. But, so we're going to bring you a list of 10 properties or so and go ahead to start on those. And we'll bring you another 10 after that, and another 10 after
I
that.
think the point is it's still in process, so it stays on here.
Okay, good. And then on page 53, I see this is a suggestion from Lorna on the right-hand side about moving this, providing funding for quality of life initiatives up under quality of life in the core area 1. I agree with that. If everybody wants to do that, it would just be some renumbering and moving.
Yes.
Sure.
And then the other thing was with regard to the ongoing, wherever, code enforcement policy. Page
First page.
52, number 3. I guess we've also talking about changing a little bit, like neighborhood services, and I think there's been some work maybe within the department of reorganizing. And is this statement, do you feel this statement number A still works in accordance with that? And when will we be hearing about that, I guess, so. But does that statement still work?
Joanne, if I could just jump in, that's why I almost said something when Roxanne talked about this. So, to me, this is a really big, important thing that we've pushed around many, many times, and it needs to be resolved. So, you know, Roxanne's pointed out more than many times, creating a criteria for ticketing someone. Is it public safety, health, welfare issue? Is it inconvenience? Creating some criteria so it's not just, you know, everything's not a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10. So I've just
So we can
added
shift
it.
that over, and so we can shift that over in our agenda management, maybe?
I put it down to bring up
And
there.
then just see if that wording actually works with
Right.
what we're thinking.
Exactly.
And then the enhanced business, on the same page, number 2, quality of life, enhanced business, recreational, cultural attractions. I wonder if we should add in the branding, because I think that that's kind of, you know, we've got the goal of branding, rename Bay Oaks, you know, maybe some variable message boards at Times Square and the new Bay Oaks parcel, Newton and Santini, where people could go up and touch screen and know what all's on the island and what's around. So I just didn't know if under the goals part, we might just say concepts to be developed within the branding. I don't know.
I have an arrow pointing to that for that exact reason.
And that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay. Ray, anything on this? Or have we touched it all? Bruce, anything additional?
Yep. So first of all, to me, the word goal in the center column is not effective. It's not correct. That should be part of the action plan. The goal is to have a vibrant quality of life, in my opinion.
Right.
To get that, we're going to do these strategic objectives. Then from the strategic objectives, there should be action plans with who, what, when. And we don't have any of that. So, again, SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time-based. That was the challenge from the strategic plan. Let's see.
So I'm going to throw something at you, and you
Yeah.
may say no to it, but this is something you have a lot of experience with in your working life. So why don't you take this and bring us back something? Okay, good enough. We'll move on to the next item.
Oh,
He said, okay. I'd like to see it because, you know, look, I made the screensaver on my town phone. Your drawing from the last time. You've got some definite ideas with this, so.
yeah, I don't have any problem doing that. I just need somebody to help me with the computer side of it.
Okay.
Because I'm not, always had people do that stuff.
Okay. So, Roger, can somebody help
First.
Bruce with the computer side of it? Okay.
Okay, I just want to make a comment about the mooring field. It says create a town-controlled
Page,
mooring.
What page is that,
Sorry,
Bruce?
page 54, the bottom line.
Right.
create a town, Fort Myers Beach controlled mooring field designed to protect boats and our environment. I didn't exactly understand what that meant. I mean, I understand the idea of protecting the environment by having pump outs and that sort of thing, but I didn't understand the rest of it. Now, if we wanted to say something there about consider expanding the mooring field and developing a mooring field central office that had amenities and, you know, I mean, is that what we meant there, or is it?
My recollection is to look at the mooring field as an asset, and, you know, its situation has been somewhat stagnant, and the question is, well, what's its next step? I think that's my recollection is what was trying to be encompassed there. And what those next steps are, fall and schedule to implement those, or identifying the steps that the council agrees we should be moving forward with, and then implementing those. So that's what I see that item is relating to. I mean, I think generally most of these things under goals are general, you know, to be followed up by exactly what you said, Councilor Butcher, the meat on the bone.
Like package 56, number 4, have in place transition plan for positions of town manager, clerk, and newly elected council members. Well, if you don't have something in the next couple of months, that's not gonna work. That's all I had. It really, you know, it's a good start. It's a recap of what we want to do. It's just not in the shape of a smart plan yet, with some modifications to some of those items in my, okay, I'm done.
Look,
I just want to touch on this transition thing, especially about newly elected council members. You know, it's possible now. It's possible we could elect 3 people who have never served on a committee, never, or 2 or whatever. And I'm just wondering if there shouldn't be some training. Get people up to, there should be. Whether that's something the town manager does, or maybe it's something the clerk does, there should be some sort of, take them through town hall, introduce them to everybody, and not just walk in blind.
Do you think that over between now and, let's say, our first meeting in January, we can all jot down and maybe email ideas in that can be a cohesive list that we could just put together, like what we would say to the person who's taking our seat? What we would want to have learned or heard, put together some kind of a thing, and then figure out how that would be presented. I mean,
a good idea.
I don't mind if I had a list of what you want presented, being that person that met with everybody for 2 or 3 hours, all 3 together. But it would have to be a reflection of what the whole council and staff thinks it would be important for them. I don't want it to be my opinion of what they should learn, but somebody should do that, and I think it should be a collective idea.
I think that's a good idea. I think, Joanne, if you meet with them, though, you should have John with you. Part of his contract is to provide training, and sunshine is such an important aspect of being a council person.
So maybe we could all, that's a good one
Yes.
right on there, sunshine, but maybe we can all send in what we think should be on
I
that.
think you have to meet with them individually, though, and do that because of the sunshine. Once they're elected, they're under the sunshine, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
But we weren't going to talk about any topics. We were going to talk about,
How to function as a council member.
walk through the thing, how your keys work, how the telephones work, how the whatever.
It's, if we meet with them, we could just advertise it as a public meeting, so if someone else wants
Yeah.
to sit in, it's a public meeting, and we can have multiple people in a room and address it that way, if you know, if that's a concern. I mean, if you think individual briefings is better, we could do it individually. If you think it's group, we could do a group, however you prefer.
Okay, that's a good idea. So let's all think about that, and we'll submit those ideas to Roger.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I think if there's one thing that, you know, we were very fortunate that in the last election, we had people who were elected who previously had been on council, and other than having to meet a couple of new faces in town hall. We're well-versed in how the town operates. And as you indicated, we may not have the same luxury in this upcoming election. So I can't state anything more emphatically that it's important that anyone who gets elected who has not previously been part of this government go to the League of Cities training for newly elected officials as soon as possible. It is comprehensive training on the role of elected officials, the do's and don'ts, how to be effective.
So add that to your list.
It'd be number one on mine. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, anything else on that? You all hit on all of my topics, so we'll move on to the next item, which is the town attorney review. And I'm guessing everybody has had an opportunity to speak with Mr. Herron.
Or we're in the process of meeting. So the materials were provided on the MMP because the council had asked for that material, so we wanted to make it public. I have spoken to half of you all, and we'll be talking with the other half by the end of today.
Okay.
And then the item will actually be on the agenda for consideration on Monday. But if there's any general questions that you may have regarding the contract or the proposed contract is identical to what previously has been approved, with one modification that was asked by Councilmember Hasselfrost, that was to clarify the prohibition on undertaking any representations that are adverse to the town of Fort Myers Beach. We are bound by Florida bar rules not to do so, and we just clarified that at her request.
Okay.
So, with respect to the remainder of the council members that I haven't met with, we'll be talking with them today.
Okay, excellent. So, Joanne, you're leaning in?
I would, just from my point of view, I did a review with Mr. Herron. He knows a couple of comments I said. Overall, I'm very pleased. I'm not sure if everyone is or the next council will be, but I do think that for council to continue his contract for one more year would be a good cohesive transition for the new town council in March. And then they will have had time to work with him and decide on their own. But especially if we have counselors that are new or whatever, I hate to have a transition of a new town attorney as well. And I don't think it's necessary, but that's my opinion. And I do want to turn in my review to Amy then, which I will do at the end. And I need a copy to Mr. Herron. I went over it with him, but I actually didn't provide a copy. That's all for me.
Okay, thank you. Bruce, comments? No. You have no comments?
I have no comments.
Okay. Ray, you have any comments? You have no comments. Roxanne?
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm one of the people that John hasn't met with yet, although we've talked some on the phone. I'm going to reiterate what I said previously. I think John's a nice guy. I've been happy with a lot of his legal work. There are other things I'm less happy with. But the thing I'm most unhappy with really isn't John. It's the fact that we've hired someone who's with a law firm that is not local to the area. Back in the day, when I was on council before, I advocated that we needed to have more of an in-house counsel, someone who's here. To me, that's helpful to the staff. They think of a question. They may not want to sit down and compose an email to someone who's not present that they can go in and talk to. So I would like to transition to that. The time scheme of that, I don't have a strong idea about that, but I would still like, I've mentioned it before, and I was hoping to hear something from my fellow council members as to whether they accept or reject that idea.
I agree with you, Roxanne, and I have met with John, and I basically said exactly what you've just said to him. this isn't a personal thing, it's a policy shift for me. And I have spoken to several LPA members. I have spoken to a couple of people, well, I've spoken to a lot of people, and there seems to be a feeling that it would be in the town's best interest to have someone here. And again, this isn't, I wouldn't call it, this isn't a normal upheaval. It's not a normal staff turnover upheaval kind of thing. This is just a shift of what would be best as we move into this next period of the town's life. What will serve us best? And I believe we should review our options. And if that, if that is hopefully having somebody here present, that would be my preference, would be to have somebody here at Town Hall that's accessible to the council, whenever. Not that John hasn't been accessible, but it is different to pop in and sit down at somebody's desk than it is to make a phone call. And so that's my feeling. My preference would be to use a phrase that I disliked immensely the last time. I can remember recoiling against it, but was to review our options. And I think that is that's kind of incumbent upon us. So that's my position. But
I'll make a comment after all that then. I agree with Joanne. But I was for having in-house at the last time we had this and lost. And we ended up getting a guy that was out of town, and then he quit before he started. And then we ended up getting John. And I was for having the local in-house guy, no question about it. However, I don't have any problem with John's work, and the idea of rotating people in and out bothers me. It's just too much. I mean, we're lucky now we've got a town manager that's been here for a few years, and we have a really good, competent, and professional staff in many positions, and it's nice to have some continuity. I don't see any reason to change the horse just because, well, maybe we ought to change the horse. If the horse was lame and not running the race, I would be all for it, but that's my opinion.
Okay.
And I haven't spoken to John yet. We're meeting later today.
Okay. Okay.
I haven't spoken with John yet either, and I have feelings both ways. I mean, so far in my short tenure return back here on council, I've had a very good relationship with John. I mean, I have no complaints whatsoever, and that'll be reflected in my in my evaluation, review, whatever you want to call it. I see both sides of this argument, and so I am undecided at the moment which way I feel I want to go on this. I am being counseled by someone outside of the council whose opinion I value very much, and our conversation is continuing, and once that's concluded, I think I'll have a better opinion on this. But anyhow,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
jump on me, ladies.
No. Ooh.
That's not what I meant.
Anita, you said a policy shift, and it is, one last point, it is a policy shift because when we were looking for legal counsel last time, we said we wanted to make sure it was with a large firm that had a large presence in Florida because there's so many issues that are statewide as well as local. And I just throw that in there to keep that in your mind as you converse forward. But thank you.
Maybe it's maybe it's an unrealistic idea of mine, but I just feel like there could be someone here, and when that, that big topic or that big ticket item comes up, we look to what we need, because I asked for a year-to-date expenditures on legal, and of course, it's not all John, but we're at about $300,000. And that's a pretty penny. So, and as I said, that's not all Mr. Herron's. But, okay, so Ray is uncertain. Bruce is not uncertain, but hasn't met with Mr. Herron yet. So this will just, anybody have any comments they want to make on the,
I have
for
a-
now, oh, I'm
I
sorry.
have a specific comment about the contract. It doesn't have page numbers, but Exhibit B, which is 1, 2, 3, I think it's the 4th page. I've got more than one copy, so. At the top, it says monthly retainer, and then it has hourly fee right under that, between the section where we talk about what he does as part of his retainer. To me, it's not in the right place. The hourly fee is for things that are outside of the things in that list and should be lower in the paragraph toward the bottom where we're talking about outside, things that are outside his bullet point duties.
Agreed.
And I also, in that last full paragraph there, it says, for all other legal matters, we propose. You don't propose things in a contract. It is or it isn't. So the word propose needs to be changed to another word that the blended hourly rate would be. It's not a proposal, it's,
well, proposal to me sounds like it's negotiable.
right, but this was part of a signed contract.
Right.
And so,
We'll modify that.
yeah. And I'm not going to say anything further at this point.
Yep, me
So-
either.
My only other, oh, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, so basically, Roxanne, you're just saying strike out that hourly fee
Move it down.
line. Why you don't, if you strike out
It really
that
is
line-
completely restated in that lower
Exactly.
paragraph, I believe, so I
Right.
think it could just be stricken.
Yeah, yeah.
What we would propose is to strike the second sentence, starting hourly fee at the top, and the bottom paragraph with the, say, for all other legal matters, we will charge a blended hourly rate.
Now for, okay. My only other comment would be, right now, his contract has expired, so on Monday, do we need to do something temporary? What do we need to do for right now?
We will need to do something temporary on Monday, in my opinion.
Make it clear, under the charter and under the agreement, this council can terminate the agreement on 30-day notice. So it would be my suggestion to make sure that everything is properly legal, that you extend the agreement, and you reserve the right to change any provision of it or terminate our services in accordance with whatever the council direction is. And, to whatever that direction is, we will work with this council, the next council, and with staff to implement whatever it is the council direction.
So basically, we're going month to month.
Well, I mean, it's basically that anyway, but we're going to Monday for darn sure. Okay?
And I would just ask Mr. Herron, maybe on Monday or whatever, if you might specifically state how many days or hours you are here in-house, and if there's any possibility for you to be here more, that might assuage some of the issues. Just,
Certainly.
thank you.
Thank you, John. Okay, we'll move on to agenda management. And is there any, so I would like to add a code enforcement discussion to our next management and planning meeting. And what I would also like to do is to ask you all to look at, especially you, Joanne and Bruce, look at this, and is there anything that you want to move up for a discussion? Because, we have limited amount of meetings left. The two that I would like to focus on are the code enforcement policy and also something that we sort of backed off of were all of our, what did we call them, surplus properties? Like the one on Virginia, the one, all those remnant properties.
Could we combine that in a discussion with beach accesses, acquiring potential beach accesses or
Yes, why
whatever?
not?
Sure.
I mean, that's
like
all
that.
kind of property.
Maybe all that could go on one agenda. Is there anything else anybody wants to put on here?
Yes.
What is it, Bruce?
What are we going to do about lighting? How are we going to attack that? The street lighting.
Well, all I could tell you is at this point, what I heard is for us to go look at other alternatives for the council's consideration, is what I gleaned from your conversation earlier today, that we should look for sources beyond FP&L. So that'll open up a fairly wide range of street lighting opportunities. I think our approach would be to discuss it with the consultant who's looking at Times Square, St. Carlos Boulevard, Bayside Park, to see what lighting they're perhaps proposing for there and what the extension would be along Estero Boulevard.
So we're saying no, thank you, for free lighting for Fort Myers Beach. And we're willing to go out and spend millions of dollars in another fashion.
That's not what I'm asking. I'm not asking to spend millions of dollars. I'm asking to look at other alternatives to see if there are.
When I implement something that's not FP&L, it's probably
But
going to cost you
FP&L
millions of
said
dollars.
today that those Amber Cree lights are available.
Yeah,
through
they
them.
cost millions of dollars. They're not part of the federal program. They cost millions, $7 million?
I don't
Roger,
think it's
something?
appropriate we have this discussion as part, we either put it on agenda management or
On
do something.
agenda management.
I would appreciate having that presentation again or something similar to it, so I agree to put it on agenda management too.
And Anita, you asked what things we wanted to make sure were up there. We went through the whole EC zone, LDC segment, and made all kinds of comments, but we've never come back to us.
Right.
That's
one I want to see. And then are we or are we not doing a workshop with the Board of Realtors?
We had one scheduled and it got canceled. I don't remember the exact reason why, and we're trying
Two of us
to
were unavailable.
see if we
I'd
can
like
find a
to-
mutually convenient date to review that.
I'd like to do that right away, too.
I have an additional thing that I'm hoping we don't have to add to agenda management, because I'm hoping I can get a quick answer from my fellow council members. I received an email from Michelle Marlsbury of the Census. I was the person who was kind of designated to deal with whether we were going to have a CCC committee. I discussed it briefly with Roger. I put some feelers out into the community, and there is very little interest in anyone serving on such a committee. She indicates in her email that a possibility that I had not thought of. She says that Lee County has their committee, their own committee, and Cape Coral and Sanibel are not going to form their own committees. They're going to be part of the Lee County committee. Estero is the only one she lists that presently is going to form their own committee. Due to the lack of interest, I would like to suggest to my fellow councilors that we ask to join the Lee County Committee. I'm willing to be that person because I have one of the things they're very concerned about is outreach to the religious organizations. I've already got that connection. I can do the work on the island that I think a committee would do.
Great idea,
through-
Roxanne.
So if everybody says it's okay, that I'm going to contact her and say, we'll be part of the Lee County Committee.
Yep. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, yes.
So that doesn't have to go on agenda management.
Good.
Good job.
If I could just add, Rexanne, there's one on here that says Town Council, Hossafras, Arch's request for brick location and funding. Is that something you really want to bring in, or is that?
Well, that was long before the whole thing happened with the county. They had asked whether, they could do like kind of a brick
Paper sale,
fundraiser kind
yeah.
of thing. And I think that everything is in such flux with that now, I'd take it off agenda management
Okay.
until,
It's off?
yeah.
And then the other one has to do with me, which is outdoor display, and I don't know MMP pending AC. What's pending for me for outdoor display of merchandise?
Well, you had mentioned that you wanted to look at the issue, and because of your other outside of town council things that you do, that you were going to give us some feedback on what some of the issues are, and perhaps even some suggestions on how they could be addressed. So I don't know if you're still planning to
Within the
do.
confines of a meeting, or with you as staff?
Well,
particularly?
something that we could put together, you and I could put together to
Okay.
bring before council for further
right.
discussion.
Okay, so we can do that. I'll put that on I'll move that up my list. And so there's the work session. Anything else anybody have? Okay. It's 11:16. I'll take a motion for adjournment, please.
So moved. Second.
No discussion. It's 11:16 and we stand adjourned. Thank you all.